Good morning. It's Friday, the 28th of February. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. North Korea fires 4 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea. This, as a South Korean missionary claims he has been detained by the North since last October on charges of being a spy. North Korea agrees to hold Red Cross talks with Japan from next Monday. The Japanese abductee issue and normalizing the two countries' relations will be high on the agenda. Plus, tensions rise in Ukraine as armed protesters storm the Crimean state parliament. The West is calling on Russia to help ease the turmoil in the Russian-dominated region. We begin with the news that North Korea fired 4 short-range missiles into the East Sea on Thursday evening. Pyongyang's latest missile launch is believed to be in response to Seoul's annual military drills with Washington. Park Ji-won starts us off.
Korea's defense ministry has confirmed that North Korea fired off 4 projectiles, which are believed to have been Scud ballistic missiles, at 5:42 Thursday evening. The 4 short-range missiles were launched from North Korea's southeastern coast in an area called Gitaeryong into the East Sea in a northeasterly direction. Gitaeryong is a mountainous region with a missile launching pad and is located some 40 kilometers south of the North Korean port city of Wonsan, North Korea's strategic and military foothold. South Korean Defense Ministry officials say the missiles are believed to have a range of some 200 kilometers. The ministry believes the missile launch was in response to the ongoing South Korea-U.S. joint military drills on the Korean peninsula. It added that South Korean military forces are prepared for any possible provocation from the north. Meanwhile, Korea's YTN reported, citing government officials, that North Korea also fired off 4 projectiles from North Korea's eastern coast north of Wonsan into the East Sea in a northeasterly direction last Friday during the second day of the Inner Korean family reunions. The projectiles were believed to have a range of some 150 to 60 kilometers. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Also on Thursday, a South Korean national held a press conference in Pyongyang claiming he is being held in the north on charges of trying to overthrow the regime. Seoul has called on Pyongyang to repatriate the Christian missionary. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
Kim Jong-un, a South Korean missionary, entered North Korea on October 7th with Bibles and other religious materials in hand. The next day, he was captured by North Korean authorities and has been held against his will ever since. At a press conference in Pyongyang on Thursday, Kim said he had wanted to build an underground church in the North Korean capital.
I advised North Koreans that I met in China to break the North Korean regime and build God's nation, and ordered them to build an underground church in the north.
North Korea claims Kim is a South Korean spy and was plotting to overthrow the state. This claim was backed up by Kim, who testified that he received money from South Korea's spy agency in exchange for providing information about the North. The National Intelligence Service denied the claims Thursday, and it's worth noting that Pyongyang has a tendency to coerce statements out of its detainees. South Korea's Unification Ministry says it was notified about the arrest in November, but that the North refused to give details on the detainee.
It was inhumane for North Korea to continue ignoring our repeated calls to identify and repatriate the detained South Korean and to only reveal his identity now.
The ministry demanded that the North ensure Kim's safety until he is repatriated, and to allow his family and lawyer to visit him in Pyongyang. It's rare for a South Korean national to be detained in the North, and the incident comes amid thawing inter-Korean relations. Experts expect Kim to be released sooner rather than later, as North Korea is known to showcase its detainees before sending them back home. But considering the unpredictable nature of the communist regime, the possibility of the South Korean missionary being used as a bargaining chip cannot be ruled out. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
North Korea and Japan have agreed to meet for working-level Red Cross talks in China next week. This according to Japan's foreign ministry. During the 7 days of talks starting next Monday, the Japanese Red Cross and its North Korean counterpart are expected to discuss repatriation of the remains of Japanese nationals abducted by North Korea. There is speculation the two sides may even talk about Pyongyang repatriating Japanese abductees believed to still be alive in the north. The last Red Cross talks between the two countries were held in Beijing back in 2012. A top U.S. defense official says the Pentagon's plan to cut the Army's overall troop numbers will not affect the number of U.S. troops stationed here in South Korea. Speaking at a forum in Washington this week, Acting Deputy Secretary of Defense Christine Fox said the U.S. military operations in Korea will not be affected as they are crucial to ensure the security of the Korean peninsula. She added the U.S. military rebalance to the Asia-Pacific region will also not change. Currently, there are slightly over 28,000 U.S. troops stationed in Korea. Earlier this week, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel unveiled plans to cut U.S. Army numbers by between 70 and 80,000. Former Japanese Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama says Tokyo should scrap plans to re-examine its landmark apology for its military's wartime system of sex slavery. When asked about the Abe government's recent remarks on reconsidering the 1993 Kono Statement, Murayama, who had also apologized for Japan's wartime atrocities during his premiership, said reopening the case would do nothing but offend Koreans. Meanwhile, the Chinese government has decided to designate a national memorial day for the victims of the 1937 Nanjing massacre. Analysts say the move is part of China's protest campaign against Japan following Abe's visit to a controversial war shrine that honors several Class A war criminals. Korea's household debt recently surpassed 1 quadrillion won. That's roughly 930 billion US dollars. To tackle the extremely heavy debt, the government has announced policy measures to get borrowers and lenders to bring down the debt faster. Ji Myung-gil reports.
The government announced on Thursday a set of measures for tackling the country's chronic household debt problem, with Finance Minister Han Ho-seok saying the government will be proactive.
To bring the ballooning amount of household debt under control, the government has set a goal of lowering the debt-to-income ratio by 5 percentage points by the end of 2017.
The debt-to-income ratio stood at 164% as of the end of 2012. The government said the debt-to-income ratio was near the mid-160% range at the end of last year. Economists view household debt as a persistent problem for the economy as it could affect domestic demand. To address it, Korea's financial regulator urged local banks to raise the portion of fixed-rate loans.
The Financial Services Commission plans to push local banks to increase the portion of loans with fixed interest rates and encourage households to repay the principal and interest together.
The regulator hopes to raise the portion of both fixed-rate loans and principal interest repayments to 40% by the end of 2017. Financial regulators also said the growth in the amount of debt held by self-employed people or people using secondary financial institutions such as savings banks say it's a bad sign, as people in this group tend to have higher rates of defaulting on their debt. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
It's got a little bit better today, but most of Korea has been cloaked under a thick layer of fine dust over the past week or so, and the blanket of haze has people understandably worried about the possible health effects. To better monitor and forecast air quality in the country, Korea may be joining hands with China. Shin Se-min reports.
As a mother, it's been really challenging keeping the house clean with flying dust particles everywhere. My skin also gets irritated when I go outside.
I usually enjoy outdoor activities, but nowadays I try to stay inside unless it's important. It's been a little boring.
They can feel it, breathe it, and taste it, and they're not happy. The heavy drowning smog from China that has blanketed most of Korea over the past week continued Thursday. An air pollution warning was finally lifted Thursday afternoon, 75 hours after it was imposed by the government, which makes it the longest warning ever. At its highest level, the concentration of fine dust stood at over 170 micrograms per cubic meter. That's nearly triple the amount recommended by the government as being safe. The polluted skies have forced the elderly and the young to stay inside as the toxic particles can cause respiratory problems and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. One local hospital in the southern part of Seoul has reported a 20 to 30% increase in respiratory patients over the past week.
I've been coughing really bad for the past couple of days. I've even started to cough up yellow phlegm. So I now wear these masks and carry some in my bag as replacements.
To better monitor and forecast air pollution in the future, Korea has turned to China for help. Environment Minister Yoon Sang-gyu says Korea will jointly develop a new forecast model with Beijing to better prepare citizens for fine dust waves headed for Korea. Once it's up and running, the government will be able to use the data collected to improve the accuracy of its forecasts.
The Korea Meteorological Administration says that the high levels of fine dust will gradually decrease as the night progresses, but it is expected to be a recurring problem as the annual yellow dust season is nearing. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Koreans are increasingly opting to vacation overseas rather than here in Korea, but there's plenty to see and enjoy within Korea's borders, and the government is determined to remind everyone about this fact. Connie Kim reports.
Take a sneak peek at Korea's best travel destinations. Ahead of an 11-day travel week designated by the government in May, the Culture Ministry and Korea Tourism Association have launched a travel exhibition to give Koreans a better idea of where to spend their vacations. The exhibition kicked off with Korean fusion music with the Culture Minister, foreign ambassadors, and Soulites in attendance.
There are a lot of good travel destinations in Korea. We want to inform and promote diverse places so that people can visit different places in the nation.
For me, as the ambassador of Russia, it's of great importance, especially this year, because our two presidents last November, when my president, Mr. Putin, he visited Korea, they reached an agreement on the special regime for visits. So I am waiting for crowds of Russian tourists coming to Korea.
From the city of Andong's famous Korean beef to Ulleungdo Island's pumpkin taffy, the exhibition introduces the unique tastes that different regions of the country offer. Visitors were drawn in by the exhibition's National Park booth, where they got to walk on simulated park trails. One feature that highlights the ecology of the demilitarized zone was especially popular, offering visitors a chance to see something they normally can't. While there's plenty to do for adults, there's just as much for children to take in and enjoy.
Archery was the most fun activity, and I learned that Gangwon-do has great scenery and lots to do. I want to visit Gangwon-do.
With plans to encourage Koreans to travel more within the country, the nation's one and only travel exhibition will be welcoming visitors until March 2nd at the COEX Convention Center. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, it's been a week since Arirang TV, Korea's only global broadcasting network, found a new TV home in the United States. In case you don't already know, Arirang TV is now available on America's #1 satellite television provider, DIRECTV, on channel number 2095. We are now going to go live to our Hwang Ji-hye in Los Angeles to see how people in Southern California are enjoying their new channel thus far. Ji-hye.
Mark, it's been an exciting week for Arirang TV as people not only here in Los Angeles but across the United States now have an easier access to programs of Arirang TV. Viewers can also watch the programs at hotels, at airports, and even at hospitals, giving Arirang an even greater reach. Here at this hotel in southern Los Angeles, Arirang TV on DIRECTV is available free of charge to guests.
We used to not have the Arirang TV and DIRECTV like before, but since we are located in Wilshire and Western, it's in the middle of Koreatown, it's good to have Arirang TV for the guests.
Starting last Thursday, DIRECTV customers in the United States could find Arirang TV and their channel lineup on channel number 2095, as the Korean broadcasting station has been added to DIRECTV's programming as a public interest channel. DIRECTV, based in Southern California, is America's #1 satellite television provider that competes with cable TV. K-pop lovers Riley and Allison, who are huge fans of Arirang TV's after-school club programs, say they're delighted to have Arirang TV on DIRECTV.
It's really convenient. We can just turn on the channel and the K-pop shows are already there.
We don't have to search for it on the internet anymore. We can just watch it on TV, so it's a lot easier.
Arirang CEO Hwang Ji-hye says that she's confident that the Korean broadcasting station will be able to raise the awareness of Korea and the Korean culture in the United States. Mark?
Well, it really is fabulous news that more people in the US can enjoy all of the programming we have here on Arirang TV. So thanks very much, Ji-hye. That was our Hwang Ji-hye reporting on Arirang TV's inclusion on America's #1 satellite television provider, DIRECTV.
Hello everyone, I'm Kwon So-ah. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Thursday was another tension-filled day in Ukraine. Western nations like the UK, Germany and the US are calling on Russia to help ease the turmoil in Ukraine's Russian-dominated region after dozens of armed gunmen seized Crimea's government headquarters. The US told Russia to show its sincerity about its promise not to intervene in Ukraine, as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has assured. In the meantime, ousted President Viktor Yanukovych is said to be in Russia, where in a statement he said he is still the legitimate president of the Ukraine. Russian state news agencies report Yanukovych plans to hold a news conference on Friday. Back in Ukraine, parliament approved all members of government with the exception of 2. Britain's intelligence agency has reportedly captured still webcam images of millions of Yahoo users, which include a large quantity of sexually explicit images. The Guardian newspaper reported on Thursday that GDHQ, with the help of the U.S. National Security Agency, gathered materials based on documents originating from NSA leaker Edward Snowden. A program called Optic Nerve made the interceptions possible and stored captures between 2008 and 2010. Yahoo said if the report is true, it would be a whole new level of violation of their users' privacy. In a bid to reunify the long-divided island Cyprus, Turkish and Greek negotiators made simultaneous exchange visits to Athens and Ankara on Thursday. The high-level peace negotiations are the first in almost 2 years. No press were allowed in the meeting, but a Turkish newspaper quotes an official as saying the talks were a positive start. Cyprus was divided in 1974 with the Greek Cypriot South and the Turkish Cypriot North, when Turkey sent in military forces following a Greek-inspired coup which sought to unite the island with Greece. U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen says harsh weather such as heavy snow and cold snaps played a role in the lower-than-forecast figures in the employment, retailing and manufacturing sectors. Yellen told a key Senate committee on Thursday that Fed officials would look into the matter as they are not sure how big the weather factor is and whether it will influence the tapering of the Fed's bond buying program. If plans stay on course, the Fed will trim its monthly bond purchases from $65 to $55 billion next month. Arizona Governor Jan Brewer has vetoed a controversial bill that would have allowed businesses to refuse service to gay and lesbian customers. Brewer, a Republican, said the law could result in unintended and negative consequences, such as hurting the state's economy by driving away businesses. The state capital of Arizona, Phoenix, is the host city for next year's Super Bowl, and the bill raised concerns the event, which is likely to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars to the local economy, could be moved.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off in the LPGA, where world number 1 Park In-bi went into the first round of the HSBC Women's Championship, hoping to win her first title this season. And after the first round, not a bad start. Park In-bi off to a great start to start off the event, but shot an even par in the front 9 before 3 birdies in the 10th, 13th, and the 14th hole. But the 17th hole, she would bogey, leaving her at 2 under 70 after the first round. Good for 7th overall, just trailing Kerry Webb by 4 strokes, who shot a 6 under on the day. And moving over to football, where fans have been waiting 4 years to find out how the Taeguk Warriors will look on the pitch in Brazil, as the Korea Football Association revealed their uniform for the upcoming Brazil World Cup. But it wasn't the uniform that caught everyone's attention. It was what manager Hong Myung-bo said in the press conference. Now, speaking at Gwanghwamun on Thursday, manager Hong Myung-bo stated that the silver medal finish by the South Korean men's speed skating team pursuit team inspired him and Korean sports generally, stating that despite lacking the experience and technique compared to the other nations, they were still able to claim the silver medal. Manager Hong stated that the current World Cup squad is very similar to the speed skating team and hopes to do the same in Brazil. And moving on, it seems like yesterday when the 2013 Boston Marathon was marred by a terrorist attack when 3 spectators were killed, including 264 others injured. And the officials are now planning to make sure that doesn't happen again this year. The Boston Athletic Association, which organizes the 26-mile race, stated that all backpacks and handbags will be banned at the event. And for athletes planning to bring a change of clothes, they will be provided with a clear plastic bag to hold their items at gear check areas. Now, this year's event is set to take place on April 21st on Patriots Day. And now moving over to some Thursday night's KBL action, where the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus continue their dominance as they cruise past the Goyang Orions 79-54. Meanwhile, with the Incheon 18-line Elephants taking on the Busan KT Sonic Boom, let's take a look at the highlights. Now, going into the game here, first quarter, both sides shooting well from the field as KT takes a 24-16 lead before going to halftime with a 34-29 lead. By the second half of the game, Incheon rallies back, outscoring KT 22-16 in the third before running away with it in the fourth quarter of the game as they rally back to take this game 70-63. And now finishing things off with some Thursday night's V-League action as the Korea Expressway dominated the Hunguk Insurance Life Pink Spiders in straight sets 3-0. Meanwhile, with Urikar taking on the lowly Russian Cash Vespid, take a look at the highlights. And going into the game here, did I say lowly? Russian Cash looking like a different team in this game as they absolutely dominate Urikar in all offensive categories, including the blocking game as well, putting up 12 blocks compared to Urikar's 3 blocks. The Vespids capitalized on Urikar's mistakes as well, scoring 20 points on errors as Russian Cash cruised through 3-0. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And time now to check in on the weather conditions in Korea and around the world. And that's all for now. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll be back at noon Korea time, but in the meantime, you can check out our website for all the rest of the day's news, and that can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.